In this video, we need some past knowledge that you guys have learned. And we actually learned this in the classroom and partially out of the classroom. It was like some of our first school at home assignments. For this section 4 of quadratic equations, we are going to need to factor. So if you need to look back at some of the factoring videos, you're able to do that. However, we will go through how to factor again in this video. So these examples are going to be multi-step. They start us off with example 1 only having 1 step, and then example 2, it's going to be 2 steps. You'll need to factor and then go through the process that we're going to learn today. The key concept is the zero product property. That states for any real number A and B, so A and B are numbers, if A times B equals 0, then A must equal 0 or B must equal 0. One of those numbers has to equal 0 because any number times 0 equals 0. So another example of this is if x plus 3 times x plus 2 equals 0, then x plus 3 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. So that's what we're going to do here. They give us the factored form of the quadratic. We're just getting familiar with using the zero product property. So in this case, we have 4x plus 1 times x minus 2 equals 0. We can separate it into 4x plus 1 equals 0 or x minus 2 is equal to 0. And then we are trying to figure out what x is. So now we have 2 different equations that we can solve for x. We're going to balance this left equation, 4x plus 2, or plus 1. We're going to subtract 1. And then that leaves us with 4x is equal to negative 1. Because again, we are balancing the equation. And then to get x by itself, we divide by 4. So that gives us a solution of x equals negative 1/4. That's one of our solutions. This equation on the right, x minus 2 equals 0, gives us our second solution. So we're again going to balance this equation. Get x by itself, we add 2. 0 plus 2 gives us 2, so x equals 2. So our 2 different solutions are x equals negative 1/4 and x equals 2. For quadratics, typically, just like I explained in the last video, typically you are going to get 2 solutions. So now at the bottom, we have a couple more examples we're going to do. X plus 1, set that equal to 0, and x minus 5. Set that equal to 0. Then balance the equations. Get x by itself on the left here. So we're going to do this one first. So get x by itself by subtracting 1. We have x is equal to negative 1. Then we're going to do the same thing with x minus 5, only this time to balance the equation we add 5. And we get x is equal to 5. And then this next one, same deal. We're going to take 2x plus 3, set it equal to 0, solve for x. X minus 4, set it equal to 0, solve for x. So on the left here, 2x plus 3 equals 0. To get x by itself, to balance the equation, we'll subtract 3. That gives us 2x is equal to negative 3. Getting x completely by itself, we divide by 2. X is equal to -3 halves. And then x minus 4 equals 0, we're going to add 4. And that gives us x is equal to 4. And 2 answers again. We are not going to do this last one. You can do that as extra practice if you want. Just notice that there is a typo. This should be x plus 14. So you can do that on your own as extra practice. We are going to combine this process that we just learned with the process of factoring in the next example. So sometimes we will need to factor a quadratic equation before you use the zero product property. So what are the solutions of x squared plus 8x plus 15 equals 0? So we need to factor this. And remember that we can make a factor chart here, a factor t. We need two numbers that multiply to 15. So multiply to this last number, but then add to get the middle number. So add to 8. So if we think back to doing this, think of two numbers that multiply to 15. The first ones that come to my mind are 3 and 5. So we have 3 times 5, that equals 15. You could think further if you want, but we're at the point, we already learned factoring, so we can look at these two numbers and see, do they add to 8? If they don't add to 8, you'll have to keep going. But in this case, 3 plus 5 does equal 8. So we can write that in these lines here. 3 plus 5 equals 8. 3 times 5 equals 15. Factored answer, remember, we put the two parentheses. We put x in each parentheses because x times x equals x squared. And then we have a positive 3 factor, so plus 3, and then a positive 5 factor, plus 5. So that creates two cases to find the solutions for. X plus 3 times x plus 5, we can separate into x plus 3 equals 0, and x plus 5 is equal to 0, and solve for x. So x is equal to, if we balance this equation to get x by itself, we subtract 3. So we have x is equal to -3. Do the same thing with x plus 5, subtract 5 to balance it. X is equal to -5. So those are our two solutions there. Now, another example. We are going to factor x squared plus 1x minus 20 equals 0. If you are following along with the notes, notice how we skipped an example. We have example 2a. I'm skipping 2b. We're doing 2c right now. So x squared plus 1x minus 20 is equal to 0. So first factor the left side into two binomials. So again, we can make a factor t. We want two numbers that multiply to -20. So just like we talked about before, earlier in the year, 4 times 5 is 20. So then let's make one of those negatives. Let's make that 4 times -5. That will give us -20. If we add those, 4 minus 5 is -1. Did it give us that middle number we're looking for? No, because we need a positive one. So let's switch where the negative sign is. Maybe let's make -4, +5. If you multiply those two, you still get -20. add those two, -4 plus 5 does give us a +1. So then inside these lines, we have -4 plus 5 is equal to 1. -4 times 5 does equal 20. So our factored answer, we have x in each parentheses, and then the factors. Because we have a -4, we have x minus 4. Because we have a +5, we have x plus 5. And then inside the parentheses, x minus 4, x plus 5. Separate those out by setting both of these equal to 0. And balancing those equations, we get x by itself by adding 4 on the left here. So x is equal to +4. Balance the second equation, x plus 5. We balance that by subtracting 5. And we get x is equal to -5. And those are our two answers. So now you can try factoring and solving for x on your own.